It has finally happened after years of speculation and questioning on whether Damian Lillard should request a trade out of Portland. Dame, after 11 years with the Blazers, has officially requested a trade in the hopes of finally winning a title before his career ends. And so now the question is, where is Damian Lillard ultimately going to land? What kind of package deal will he return for the Blazers? And also, what does this mean for the Blazers' future going forward? And it's what we'll be discussing in this video. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe so you don't miss a video. And in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, the timing of this is pretty funny. I uploaded a video earlier this morning, and in that video, I discussed some of the biggest surprises from free agency thus far. And one of those surprise signings was the Jeremy Grant deal, in which the Blazers gave Grant, in my opinion, an insane 5-year, $160 million contract, 5 years to a player who isn't an all-star, a great player, but not an all-star level player, a player who is going to be turning 30 years old this upcoming season. And when discussing that deal, I said, well, by the Blazers giving Grant this contract, it all but confirms that Dame is staying in Portland. Dame actually called out, or at least it was reported anyway, that he wanted Jeremy Grant to remain with the team. That was an important piece for him as it relates to building a competitive and winning team around him. And so by the Blazers overpaying him and handing Grant this fat 5-year contract would leave most to believe they're looking to do one last push to build around Damian Lillard. And sure enough, the next day, Dame asks out. Now, maybe the Blazers already knew or were getting an inkling that Dame was leaning towards asking for a trade, and they wanted to re-sign Grant anyway as one of their better players, one of their veteran players to mentor their younger guys. But if it wasn't the case, and the Blazers signed Grant with the intention of having it be the piece to build around Damian Lillard and keep him happy, if that was the case, I would be pissed if I'm the Blazers front office. Like, you couldn't have informed us earlier that you were wanting out before we handed a big contract to Jeremy Grant. Now they've got this player, again, a good player, certainly not worth $160 million though, but a good player, a guy who now doesn't fit their timeline since they're presumably going to be rebuilding if they're trading for Lillard, and is now also a contract that is going to be hard to move in a trade because 5 years of paying Grant over $30 million, not a lot of teams are going to be interested in taking that on. And with Grant eating up a good portion of your cap space, it limits you, meaning the Blazers, to really take full advantage of this rebuild with guys like Simon, Shaedon Sharpe, and now Scoot Henderson, and of course, whatever players or future draft picks they can get in return for Dame, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah, the timing of Dame requesting this trade, if I'm the Blazers, is very aggravating, especially given everything that organization has done in committing to him, making sure that he's paid handsomely, and really being fully committed to building around him going into this season, despite knowing that their better option would be to stick with their young talent that they have, was to move off from Lillard and to start fresh. But regardless, what's done is done. Lillard wants out, and now the Blazers are going to have to try and find a trade partner that is going to net them the biggest return for their franchise player. Now, it's been reported that 4 teams most likely are going to be vying for Lillard. That would make the most sense for Dame to win a championship, as well as the teams that actually have the assets to make a trade enticing enough for the Blazers. And those are the Heat, the Clippers, the 76ers, as well as the Brooklyn Nets. But multiple reports from the major outlets are claiming Lillard has his eye on the Miami Heat. That's the team he wants to be traded to, which makes sense. They went to the finals last season. They need a point guard. They need added offense. Another superstar paired alongside Jimmy Butler makes them instant contenders. And I think the culture fit is there, the roster fit is there, but I do question whether the Heat have enough to make a trade for Dame work. Because here's the thing, they're obviously not going to trade Jimmy Butler. That wouldn't make sense. Dame is only going to want to go there if Jimmy is there. They're not going to trade Bam Adebayo. I would consider him to be untouchable at this point. The Heat just lost Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. I mean, really what the Heat have to offer is Tyler Hero on a pretty big contract. They could add Duncan Robinson. Again, that's more to make the money work because Lillard is set to make over $45 million next season. You could also include some of the young players that have some potential, like Caleb Martin, Nikola Jovic, or Jaime Jaquez Jr., who they just drafted 18th overall. And the Heat can also include picks that are pretty far out into the future. I believe they own their picks that can be traded anyway in 2028 and 2030, maybe pick swaps in 27 and 29, since you obviously cannot trade your own picks in back-to-back drafts due to the Stepien rule. It's not a bad package, solid young talent with some draft capital, but is it enough for a superstar like Damian Lillard? Are the Blazers going to be okay giving up their franchise player for that? Now, the challenge, though, for the Blazers is they're not going to have much in terms of leverage as they would have maybe had in years past in trying to trade Dame. One, because Dame is older. As great as he is, he's got a lot of guaranteed money coming his way until he's in his late 30s, which is going to make teams a little wary of bringing him in as it relates to that long-term outlook. And when a player makes it public that they want to be traded, teams who are wanting to trade for Lillard know the Blazers have to move him and will likely have to settle for a little less than Dame is probably worth in a trade. And especially if the reports are true that Dame is solely focused on the Heat don't have to offer the world to land him. But unlike Bradley Beal in his situation where he had a no-trade clause and could dictate where he wanted to go, the Blazers can say, too bad. You want to go to Miami, but we found a better deal elsewhere. And one team where I think they can get a better return is from Brooklyn. The Nets have a ton of draft capital that they acquired in the Kevin Durant trade, 4 first-round picks to be exact. They also received an unprotected first-round pick in 2029 from the Mavs in the Kyrie Irving trade. And I know the Nets have said they're not trading him because they believe him to be a franchise cornerstone, but they could include Mikal Bridges, or Cam Johnson, or Cam Thomas, potentially Nick Claxton. I'm not saying the Nets can trade all of these guys because then what team would they have to contend with Lillard, but more so pointing to the fact that the Nets would have much more to offer in a package deal, especially in the form of draft capital to the Blazers, which for a team that is going to be rebuilding, they're going to be most interested in that. The Sixers, yeah, another viable option, to be honest, a team that is likely going to make more sense in terms of being the most competitive. I personally think that an Embiid-Lillard pairing is going to be more dominant than a Jimmy-Lillard pairing. The Sixers could dangle Tyrese Maxey, which was strategic on their part by not offering him an extension on his rookie deal to use him as a potential trade piece for a superstar like Lillard should he become available. The Sixers also have some draft capital, but not as much as the Nets do. They could also throw in Tobias Harris, more as salary filler, and then flip him for a draft pick or two as well. Like I said, I like the fit of Lillard and Philly, especially considering Philly is going to be losing James Harden, but I don't see them having the trade chips to win a bidding war for Lillard. And then for the Clippers, I mean, this is a team that needs a point guard. They're also a team that has shown interest in James Harden. But if you have your choice between Harden and Lillard, yeah, you take Lillard all day, every day. The problem for the Clippers is that they don't really have the trade assets that a team like the Blazers would be looking for in a rebuild. They don't own a lot of their upcoming draft picks, or they're unable to trade their picks anyway. They could do some pick swaps and maybe some second rounders, but like, are the Blazers even going to be remotely interested or considering that for a return for a superstar player? They also don't really have any promising young players that you can get excited about. Maybe Bones Highland and Terrence Mann, but that's about it. So while I'm sure the Clippers are going to be interested in going after Lillard, I don't see that being a viable option in competing against teams like the Heat or the Nets, who have significantly more to offer a team that is going into a full-blown rebuild. The other piece I wanted to add, and I'm probably in the minority in this opinion, but I have to say I lost some respect for Damian Lillard throughout this process. Dame should have requested a trade years ago, but was so focused on being this loyal player, priding himself on staying with one team throughout his career, which is commendable, but you had to know this team wasn't going places, and especially going into this offseason, stringing the team along. Reports coming out that he wasn't happy the Blazers kept their 3rd pick, but still, he was going to wait around and see how things would transpire going into free agency, see if the Blazers were going to do what he considered to be prioritizing building around him. The Blazers really have done everything that he's asked. And then the first day of free agency, he asks out. The meandering over the years, preaching loyalty while also securing massive contracts, and now, at the age of 33 and on a big long-term deal, he asks to be traded when the value the Blazers can likely get for him in return is lower than what it was 2-3 years ago. Now, unlike James Harden, where I think moving him is going to drag out and won't get done quickly, I think the Blazers are going to try and move on this quickly and get their rebuild started while free agency is still in full swing. I wouldn't be shocked to see Dame traded in the next week or so, and I think ultimately he will land in Miami, as this is Miami's final chance to make an all-in push while Butler is still in his prime. But I would love to hear what you guys think, though. Where do you think Dame will ultimately land? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.